Ladies, do you often wish you were a little better prepared for the unexpected? Please tell me you were not one of the ones fighting for toilet paper a few years ago. Do you want to make sure that doesn't happen ever again? Welcome to the Rebel Tribe. This is where we interview women who are doing their own thing, leading the revolution. My guest today is Julia Neiman. She is the host of the Disaster Preparedness Talk radio show. She also has a BS in psychology and an MS in social work. She is absolutely fabulous. She's a social worker, or she was a social worker for foster youth. So she has a ton of experience. She can help you be prepared for anything that's coming. She is totally our emergency preparedness goddess. So without further ado, let us welcome Julia. Julia, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Melodian. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk about this because I did not know you had a radio show. When I first met you, we were in the same health and wellness MLM.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a radio show that's about disaster preparedness, which is kind of health and wellnessy, I guess. Okay.
Well,
But
yes, it
still.
is. It is. Plus, it's also I'm teaching it as a life skill.
So how did we jump from MLM to talk show radio host?
Well, I think you realize MLM was never really my thing. But they were, this particular company had this water bottle with a filter that I really, really, really wanted to try. So I got into it, and I was just going to buy that, and then got conned into I shouldn't say conned, but pushed in, exactly what I'm talking
Yes,
about.
yeah, we both got sucked
Pushed into
in.
this
I
group, and I
understand.
did it, and I bought all of these water bottles with filters, and I had great gifts to give away for the next year or two. So it worked out really well. But I have no complaints. I still have the water bottle and a couple of the filters left, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I was, even back then I was doing like online, what do I want to call it, live streaming on Facebook, talking about disaster preparedness, and that just kind of grew into a radio show.
Awesome. Like I said, I had no idea, because it is I don't want to say a pet topic of mine. Yes, it is. It's a pet topic of mine. I'm one of they think, a lot
Yeah.
of my friends think I'm a little bit of a crazy prepper person. And no, I don't have 25 years worth of food stashed in an underground bunker at my house.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Same here. I don't either. We don't need to go that far. But you need to have some skills, and you need to do some food preservation and have food put aside. I know the authorities tell you they went from 72 hours of supplies to 2 weeks of supplies. And I live in the mountains, as you know, and we have two major earthquake faults that run the entire length of this mountain. So if one goes, it's going to trigger the other, because they actually cross over each other. So if one goes, the other's going to go, and there's no getting out. We have one road in and out. It goes in two directions, but from east to west, but that's it. There's no other roads, and those roads are in poor shape as it is. So we're stuck here. And it could be for a long time that we're going to be stuck here. So that's what we're preparing for. We're actually getting the entire community involved in doing this preparation.
well,
And I'm calling it a resiliency project.
that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you, because I know a lot of people, when I talk about being prepared, like I said, they think I'm just some kind of crazy, the preppers with the bunkers and and I don't. I mean, I can survive quite nicely for quite some time. I was not out fighting for toilet paper in 2020 because I had enough. Okay.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
people don't understand that we're not preparing for the end of the world as we know it. We're not preparing for the zombie apocalypse. We're preparing for, I remember in, I guess it was like 93, when I came home. I was working in town and I drove home on December 23rd and parked my car. And that car didn't move again until like mid-January because there was so much snow
Wow.
in Arkansas where we're not prepared for that much snow. And I live on a dirt road. So I could literally not get off my road and into town to get anything for almost 6 weeks. But I was fine. I was fine
Yeah,
because I had 6 weeks worth of food. I was good. I mean, and people, we did lose the heat pump, but fortunately I have wood stoves and things. But I mean, it was so bad. The person that was supposed to repair it got to the head of my road and looked at the dirt road and said, "Nope, not coming down it," and just called us and said, "Yeah, I can't get down your road." So they think it's like, like I said, the end of the world, and it's not. It can be snowstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, fires. I mean, they're having wildfires in Texas right now.
that's right.
How
Yep,
can we impress upon women? Because I think it's women who kind of have to take charge of this. I don't think the men get it.
yes,
Women are the caregivers of the family. How do we impress upon women the importance of being prepared to be self-sufficient for, like you said, the FEMA website used to say 3 days. Now it says 2 weeks. How can
that's
we
right.
impress upon them to be prepared to survive on their own for 2 weeks?
So the first thing I would say is this is about taking personal responsibility for your health and well-being and the health and well-being of your family. That's the main issue here. Self-responsibility. The fire department where I live is saying to us, we're not coming. If we have an earthquake, if we have a major flood, if we have major issue here, we're not coming because we have other things that we are tasked with doing. So it's up to you to do it yourself. And this is not a joke now at this point. The United States has fewer than ever resources available. We have a lot of resources, but we don't always have the money to get those resources where they need to go. And I think we started learning that lesson back in Hurricane Katrina, then Hurricane Sandy. And the people were isolated. They didn't have any help for days on end. This is not like a what if kind of situation. This is a when this is going to happen situation. We have fires, we have floods. Have we ever had floods like this level before? I don't think so. I don't remember ever seeing floods like this. And I grew up in the Everglades. I lived in the Everglades. We had hurricanes like crazy. We had flooding, but nothing to the extent that we're experiencing in places that have never even flooded before. So we really need to look at what's happening in the world and what are you have to start looking at what are you going to do for yourself and your family. And that means just basic things. It doesn't mean going out and building this, underground outdoor kitchen or living space. That's not what we're talking about here. Because I'm with you. People call me a prepper goddess or whatever, but I'm not a true prepper. I'm just getting some things together that will help me get through whatever is going to happen, like alternative cooking. Okay, so I live in California in the mountains in the middle of a forest. It gets cold here, but I don't have a wood stove. I don't have any of those things. So I have a butane burner that I can actually cook on. You can use it in the house, which is important because if it's snowing, you don't want to take it outside. If it's summertime, you don't want to take fire outside. So I can use this butane burner. I can cook on it. I can, warm my hands on it and just kind of gather around it a little bit. It's not much, but it's enough for me. I can heat up soup or, I have water, as much water as I can handle in a place where I live that doesn't have a lot of storage, right? So I'm just doing what I can one step at a time. Water is super important. We can live without food, but we can't live without water. So, in terms of water, I have it right here. I didn't even intend to, but it's here for my next broadcast. So save up to 3 gallons per person for drinking water and washing per day. If you can put aside 3 gallons per day. And if not, just put aside as much as you can. and then ration the water. It's better to have water than not have it, right? So you do what you can. That's what I always tell people. Food is, I have a variety of different kinds of foods. I have some cooking food. Some canned food. I have box foods. I have some of that camping food. And people think that camping food is going to get you through an emergency. It's really not, because what it is calorie dense. It doesn't have a lot of nutrition. If you read the label, it's not going to keep you healthy. So you want to have other things to go with it. I have canned meat and chicken, tuna, things like that that you can add to those meals, right? And that's what people have to start looking at. You have to just get over the fact. I hear people say, "Oh, it's not going to be so bad. It won't happen here." It's going to happen. It whatever the danger to your area is, and that's kind of where you have to start. If you actually get out in your neighborhood, and this is what got me started. You get out in your neighborhood and you do a risk assessment. Look at the things that could possibly happen. Here where I live, this past winter, last year this time, we had 11 feet of snow. That's not something that we're used to. The plows and the community plows all broke. We had to bring in bigger plows, but we called the power company. We have Southern California Electric. We called them in. Their plows wouldn't make it up to the higher elevations, where people were stuck in their homes for 2 weeks with no power, no phone, no heat, unless they had generators. And not everybody had generators. I don't have a generator, so I went out and bought myself one of those little power packs that I can plug a heater into it for a little bit at a time, but that will keep me from freezing to death. I can plug my low power warming blanket into it, which will also keep me from freezing to death. And it's something you can use just while you're watching TV. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's about personal responsibility. You have to take care of yourself and your family, because nobody's going to do it for you.
A risk assessment is, I think that's awesome. That's the first thing, because I did not know when we first moved out here that we live on a major fault line. One of the biggest fault lines in the country runs right through Arkansas and Oklahoma. And yes, there's been more earthquakes than normal over in Oklahoma. We just had one a few weeks ago that was in Oklahoma, was the epicenter, but it woke me up here. I was like, man, am I still in California? What?
Yeah, no, but that's because of fracking. You're having earthquakes in places where you never had them before, because these companies are drawing out the gas from under the ground, and it's just creating earthquakes.
And then I read an article that scientists say that Tornado Alley, again, I live in Arkansas, Oklahoma, they say Tornado Alley is shifting eastward. So it's moving from Oklahoma into Arkansas. And yes,
Yes.
I've seen the storms have been getting a little bit more, shall we say, intense. Um, there was a tornado. I've lived out here 33 years, and there was a tornado in a town where my mother-in-law lives that in all the time I've lived here, I've never heard of a tornado touching down there, but it did. I think it was last year, the year before. So yes, things are changing and things are happening in places where you don't ever think. And I live outside of town on a dirt road, so I already know if anything happens major, they're not coming for me. I'm too
That's
far
right.
out. Okay. I'm too
That's
far out.
right.
They're not coming for me.
They're
So,
not coming for you. That's exactly right. And I live in a place where we have a lot of restrictions. Like, we used to have chickens here, but now they wouldn't allow chickens anymore. We have a property owners association, and it's worse than an HOA. So, you know, we're lobbying them to try to get chickens back, because chickens are a good source of food. And Melodian, what you're saying is happening all over the planet. People are experiencing things that they've never experienced before. Tornadoes and cyclones, and we have a lot of tornadoes in California where we hardly ever had any, and they were never really large, and now we're looking at real tornadoes coming in. So and they were saying, the weather service was saying that they're looking at category 6 hurricanes. in the Atlantic Ocean hitting our East Coast.
Can they go that
Category
high?
6. Can you imagine? I don't think any of us have ever seen the results of a Category 6 storm before.
No, I've seen Katrina and I've seen
Yeah,
Andrew because
yeah.
I helped
Uh,
with both,
and
but
having grown up in Florida, I lived in Florida for 8 years. I've been through a lot of Cat 5 hurricanes, and they produce tornadoes and twisters of all kinds. But, putting aside the whole, we're not even going to go to the whole political aspect of this, or, whether this is man made or not man made, it doesn't matter. None of that is important anymore. What's important to look at is these things are actually happening. This is not a what if. All you have to do is turn on the news, and every day you're hearing about some other disaster.
you know, my
So it's real. And I live at 5,400 feet. That's the lowest elevation on the mountain where I live in my community. And I chose it on purpose because as I get older, I want to live in a place where I can at least get around in a snowstorm and get to the post office and get to the general store. But even I at this level was trapped in my home for 11 days because of all the ice and snow. And the ice froze, it just kept freezing faster than I could shovel it away from my door. And it built up in front of my door where I could not open my door. And it's the only door I have out.
Now I hear a lot of people tell me, well, you're lucky you can do it because you live out in the country and you have land and you have a big house and you can do all this stuff, but anybody can be more prepared, even
That's right.
even apartment dwellers in the city. What are some things that they can do, like my daughter lives in the city. What can they do to be more prepared?
So supplies, you have to lay in supplies. I think it's going to be more challenging in the city, not so much to store things for yourself and your family, but to stay safe when the neighbors go nuts. Because because if it goes on long enough, they will, and they'll start looting, and then they'll just go for the easiest thing, which is in your house. But so security needs to be looked at. How can you keep yourself safe? Try not to have to go out. So, what I did here, because I don't have a lot of storage, I turned my coat closet into a pantry, and I just put the coats, got a coat rack and put them on the coat racks instead of in the closet. And now I have this whole closet. I put some bookshelves in there, and I've got it all lined with food and water and things that I'll need, candles, flashlights, extra batteries. I have that little, backup generator thing. It's just a small one. I don't have space for a giant generator. So, and I don't own this home, I rent. So it's not like I can make major construction issues here. So that's what I do. And I just lay in as much food. The good thing when you're doing your own preparation and you use real food, I'm learning how to can. It's not something I've ever done before, but I'm learning how to can. I'm really getting good at doing fermented foods. I really like that, and that'll keep you healthy. Fermented foods are some of the best things that you can eat for your digestion. And when you're stressed, like in a disaster situation, you want to look at things that are going to keep you, regular and help alleviate some of the stress on the physical body. So a lot of things need to be looked at, but the people in the city have to create some space, under bed storage wherever possible, get in an extra dresser with drawers that you can line with emergency supplies. If you have a garage, you want to fill your garage with things, extra blankets. Get a small little generator like I have. It's just the size of a boom box, actually, but I can plug a heater into it. I can charge my phones and all the US, things that require USB port. So it'll keep me going, and that's all I really need is to keep me going. I've got extra blankets, I've got a sleeping bag, I've got a kit in my car. So it's not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. Start looking at some of these people who are teaching this kind of stuff on YouTube. There's a guy, I don't remember the name of his show, but he specifically talks about what you can do if you live in the city. So
Okay.
they're out there. People are out there sharing this information. And I'm sorry that I'm not prepared with his name or his YouTube channel name, but he's really good. And he's specifically about surviving in the city, so he shouldn't be too hard to locate.
I love the fact that you mentioned the kit in your car, because I have one too, my little go box. And yes, I get laughed at for having my go box, but quite a few years ago, actually, probably about 10 years ago, I was working somewhere and it flooded and I could not get out. I got stranded at work and I just went down to my car and got my little kit and had my blanket and I had a bottle of
Yep.
water and I had some protein bars and I just
Yep.
bunked down in my office and I was, I was fine because I was good. So
Exactly. And mine is I have a big box in the back of my car and it's got linens, it's got flannel sheets, and it's got cotton sheets for the summer because it gets hot up here in the summer. But it's cold in the winter. I've got water. I've got can't keep food because we have bears. And if you keep food in your car, the bears know exactly how to break into the car. And if you don't lock the car, they know how to open the door. But if you didn't lock the car, they know how to get the claws up through the windows and pull the windows out. So you don't want to damage your car. So no food, but I do have a go bag ready. If I have to leave, I take it with me. And if I have time, I have a lot of other things. I have some of that camping food. I have my little stove to take with me. So I'm ready. Flashlights, you want to keep flashlights, keep the batteries in a go bag though. You don't want to keep the batteries out because if it gets too hot or it gets too cold, that'll ruin the batteries. So all this stuff is available. All anybody needs to do is Google it, or they can watch my radio show. They can actually watch it on Facebook, and it's going to have its own YouTube channel soon. So, come on and post anything that you want me to talk about. I'm happy to add any topic you want to talk about. Right now, we're running through the basics. So this is really timely talking to you today because we're just running through the basics. And one of the most important things that you can have is a radio. So if there's no power, you need to look at what kind of radio are you going to have that will get you through a power outage. And I've got one that has 4 ways to work. It uses a battery. You can plug it in. You can plug it into a USB port. It's got a solar panel and a wind up. All I have to do is wind it and it works. And it's a great little radio. It gets the weather station. It gets emergency stations. It gets whatever you need. And plus you can have some entertainment and it never runs out. If you have the wind up thing or the solar, it never runs out. It's a great little radio. It costs about $34. And that's one of the most expensive things in my kit is the radio, $34. So I'm part of an emergency radio group that we put together in our neighborhood because that's what got us started with this was somebody. We have CERT here, which I don't know. I know CERT is a national organization. It stands for Community Emergency Relief Team. And we have our CERT team and we have radios. So if we need each other, we get on the radio. And that's what happened last year was one of our members got on the radio and she said, is there anybody out there? We need help up here. We've got people who are trapped. And we actually had one person who passed away. So that's got us started on, look, we need to do something for the whole community. And once you get into it, you find your neighbors are so grateful that somebody's there to want to organize this and get it going. So we now have this, you have to get a license for this, but it's called GMRS. And the license doesn't require a test. You just go to the FCC and pay a fee and get a license number to use on the air. And you get on the air and we have nets couple nights a week check-in so that we're all used to working with our radios. And we know, and now like today we had a weather alert started yesterday and it's running through today because we had a snowstorm last night. And we had 30 people monitoring to find out if you need help. You get on this radio, we share information like what the road conditions are like, and we're watching out for each other. And that's so important. I mean, if we could start bringing people in our communities together, it makes this whole thing, this whole preparation thing, less of a chore and more enjoyable. And you've got people sharing the burden of getting all of this stuff together. And it's amazing. You find out what talents and skills your neighbors have. It makes you feel a lot more secure.
Oh, that brings me right into a question I've been wanting to ask. So I know we need supplies, we need food, we need water, we need our medicines, we need, cleaning supplies and personal care items, and I need
Yeah.
a ton of pet food and I need all that stuff. But on top of that, what skills? I mean, I was reading a book about prepping, and they were like, oh, you need to learn animal husbandry and you need to learn basket weaving and quilting, and I'm like, yeah, no. Okay.
No, see,
No. Okay.
I don't agree with that. If you're raising animals, you already know how to take care of them. All you need to do is have more food for them and water. You need to make sure that they're going to live. And what do they need to live? Well, if you're raising them, you already know that. So just do more of it and plan ahead and have extra. That's the same thing with pets. Have extra, but make sure you have enough extra to get through like at least 2 weeks, if not longer. Because look at if the grid goes down, this country has done nothing to upgrade the grid since it was built. Nothing. So if the grid goes down, we could be without power for 18 months or more. That's what the government is telling us, 18 months or more. So what are you going to do if that happens? And we've already seen there have been groups out there that have attacked the grid, homegrown terrorists, not even foreign terrorists, but homegrown terrorists who are looking for civil war have been out there shooting up the grid. And it's happened a couple of times. I remember several years ago, the grid went down in one state and it took 4 states down. And we were without power for a couple of days.
So since I'm not going to learn basket weaving and animal husbandry and all that good stuff, what
Yes.
skills do I need? I first aid. I am a first aid. Actually, I'm a Red Cross certified instructor, so I'm good for
Awesome.
first aid and CPR. Um, and I'm starting to learn to perfect my Arkansas soil gardening skills
That's
because
that's
it's a little
awesome.
different.
So yeah, growing your own food would be a really good skill to have. Gardening, that would be we don't have that here because we have bears and deer, and if you put in a garden, the next thing you know it's gone. Whole plants taken underneath the ground by the ground squirrels. I mean, they're just gone. So we have a community garden. And we have some people that are out there, you rent the space and you grow your garden out there. So we do have that. We have a general store here that has some food, but that's not what you're asking. You want skills. So gardening would be a great skill, especially you have your own big property. You can do a lot of gardening there. There are some things that grow really fast and don't even ever need to be replanted. Things like beets and radishes, and they have seed pods and the pods fall on the ground, and the next thing you know, you have enough to last you several years of beets and radishes and things like that that just self-seed themselves. Um, just being able to use simple tools to put a screw back in the door, having things like duct tape so in case your window breaks, and knowing what to do is a skill. Like if you have severe winters and you have no power, if you have sheeting like the drop cloths that the painters use that are clear plastic, put clear plastic in your window, line it a couple layers of it. That'll help keep it warm inside. It really makes a difference, and the plastic will reflect the sun inside. It'll make it warm. It makes a big difference. And I used that last year. I did that. I had 2 layers of plastic, put it in my window. It really kept it from being overly cold in here. So those are all good skills. You know, it depends on what your needs are as to what skills you have to have. There are people all around us that know how to drive tractors. We have a excavator here, or the POA owns an excavator and snowmobiles and all kinds of things, and they're starting to make improvements. But I think you need to look at skills in communication. Like on the radio, you can use walkie-talkies, get a neighbor you can communicate with. If you have a problem, you're going to need help. How are you going to reach those people? Those are what I consider skills, everyday skills that are going to save your life. These DIY projects, you can go on and do it yourself projects are everywhere on the internet. Find something you're interested, learn it. But that's the benefit of getting together with your neighbors and learning what skills they have. We have a lot of nurses up here, retired doctors. There's a fire station, like I could walk across the street and I'm at the fire station. So there's certain things that I don't need to have covered because they've got it covered, but I'm learning to can. That's a skill that I think I need because I can help feed my neighbors who aren't really taking this seriously. And I feel an obligation to do that. Um, I'm 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 educating people. That's what I do. That's my skill. I'm educating people on what they can do. And then we're looking in the community to find people that do that. Like we're actually starting a canning group
Oh, what fun. I can.
because it's a great skill to have, don't you think? That's
Oh, I
something
love
I
it.
would consider a major skill is how to prepare food, how to preserve food. Another thing that we're doing, we're create that I see as skill building is learning how to make a smokehouse. They won't let us put it up now, but if there's a disaster, all bets are off and we're going to be prepared. We're gathering all the material we need. We're getting the instructions together and we're going to be able to erect a smokehouse. And then we have a lake. We're stocking it with fish. It hasn't been really paid a lot of attention to, but we had it cleaned out. We're learning how to maintain it, how to make sure the water is clean so that we can actually eat the fish. We've got catfish, we've got bluegill, we're adding largemouth bass, and I don't know what else we'll put in it over time, but we'll have a really great food source. We're putting together a hunters group. So those people that have skills in hunting and in dressing animals and preparing them for eating, we're putting together a team of people that are going to go out in the mountain. Because if you just take people that want to just go hunting and have no practice or anything, somebody's going to
I'm
get
sorry.
killed.
I'm trying not to
Okay.
laugh.
Yeah, it's important though. So we're putting together teams and trying to break people up. So what we're doing, I think you see that what we're doing is not only preparing to live, but preparing to avoid people having to panic and go after each other's supplies. And I don't think that that would happen up here. We're a really tight community, actually. There's only 2,200 homes up here, and most of them aren't filled most of the time. They're weekend homes or, short-term rentals. So we don't have that big a population. And we're all learning to depend on each other, little at a time. And people go, well, I came up here to be alone. Okay, fine. We're going to leave you alone then. You're going to die on your own. And that's what I tell people. And then they think twice about it. So, just learn to use basic tools, learn how to do basic repairs around your house. I think that that's important. If a tree falls on your house, then you probably don't need to do a lot of repair. And we did have that happen here last winter. I started to tell you earlier and then got sidetracked, but we had this one person had a tree fall on the direct center of his house and it split the house in half. The house literally went like that
Wow.
and his tree laying in the middle of it. And the next thing you know, the bears are climbing the tree to get in the house. So he had to move out, and the whole community came together to help him move all his stuff. He found a rental. Somebody offered him a place to live. We moved his stuff in, and we gave him food and took care of him and his girlfriend, and whatever we could do, we did it. We came together. And so I have a lot of confidence in my community that that's what's going to happen when we have an even bigger emergency. We're all going to come together. And that's something that you can just take responsibility, start with your neighbors on your block. You know, start with the neighbors on the block, because find out what skills they have. You have first aid, I have first aid. If not, join a CERT group. See if there's a CERT group local, a community emergency response team, because they teach you all of those skills. They teach you the things that you need to know. Cribbing would be a really good skill. I don't know how many people out here know what cribbing is, but that gives you the ability to lift a fallen house off of somebody safely. Cribbing, it's where you probably seen it on TV. They come in with boards and whatever they can, and they pile them up, but you have to do it in a certain way to make it safe. And then you can lift it, use a lever after you get all these boards piled under whatever you're trying to lift, and you use a lever to push down on it, and it actually will lift a whole house off of somebody.
I had no
It's
idea. That's
amazing.
awesome.
It is cribbing. It's called cribbing, and that's a really important skill to have, I would think. And even in your own home, I mean, Northridge, in the Northridge earthquake in 94, where that apartment building fell down, it it was a 3-story building leveled to 1 story. And the people that they got out, they used cribbing to lift all of the stuff off of them and pull them out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty amazing. So that to me became a really important skill to have. And that's the thing about CERT group is they meet usually once a month, and you come together and you learn a new skill and you practice it. So
Hmm.
you're always practicing something.
Let's check that
And
out. I
then,
don't know if we have one here.
yeah,
Oh,
if not, you might want to see if you can get one started. Um, I'm pretty sure FEMA sponsors the CERT, and I know they have grant money available to get new CERT teams started.
hmm.
It's something to look into. And
Yeah,
if not, find somebody who has these skills who will teach them to you.
that's why I'm talking to you.
Ex- Yeah. So
That's
I can share with you what skills are useful and what skills to have, but in terms of how to do those things, I probably wouldn't be the best person to teach them.
no, but you can give this an idea of what they need. And like I said, no one, I learned what I learned. I learned first aid and CPR through the Red Cross, and there's Red Cross chapters everywhere. So
Yeah,
go take a
exactly.
Red Cross class. They're not
So
expensive. They're not, they're everywhere. Go take one.
exactly. And you can take them online now. You can do
Yeah.
them online. They have online first aid classes. And I think you have to go once to do the practical.
I was gonna say, I have never taught the online class. I know they existed. I've never looked at them because I've always been, how do you,
So
how do you
if you,
practice? How do you
well, no,
practice?
I think you have to go once to the class to do the physical stuff. But but yeah, they're available online. And then if you're still certified, get a class together. Get your neighbors together and go, we got to learn this stuff. Come on.
Well, I think there's quite a few of us out here that are certified because there's a school teacher real close to me. So
Yeah.
I think she's certified. So I think we're good there.
I
And
used to
you
be
know,
certified when I was doing foster parent training. I used to train foster parents, and that CPR was part of it. And so I got sent to, I had to get my CPR certificate, I had to get a swimming certificate, and all of those things. And it's not that I taught anybody how to swim, but I taught basic safety, pool safety. So I had to get certified for that. So I know what that's like. And those are very useful skills to have and to help your neighbors with that triage. That's one of the things that they teach CERT members is how to do triage. And then so you triage them, and then you have first aid people that know first aid that come in, and you've already sorted through these patients for them. It makes it so much easier. They just know who to start with and don't have to spend time figuring that out. So that's important. I mean, the CERT manual is like this thick with all these different skills. Um, like you said, gardening, water, building a water catchment. Water catchment systems aren't that expensive, and you can just attach them to your drain pipe, have that run into the barrel, They have barrels that have pumps. You don't even need to open them. The water with the right water purification tablets is good for 5 years. If you boil the water, you don't even need the tablets. So that's another thing. And all these things are available. Outdoor cooking, if you don't have a barbecue. I live in a place where no fire allowed, period. No outdoor flames whatsoever. They don't even want you to use candles in your house. That's how scary fire is to us in this forest. And so people that know how to cook outdoors, we can have gas barbecues. And we have this park where we have big barbecues set up, and we have every week in the summertime, we have get-togethers, community barbecues. So we're now looking at turning that into an outdoor kitchen and having somebody man it in an emergency where people can come and get their food cooked. Because some people don't know how to barbecue.
Well, I'm an old Girl Scout, so I can make anything in a Dutch oven.
Same here. Same here. But where you live, you can have fire. So how do you build a fire? And there's all these different kinds of fires. So what's the most appropriate fire for the use that you want it for? That's a skill in itself. And I learned 6 or 7 different ways to start a fire. I like the one where you prop the logs up in a V shape, and then you start the fire, and then they burn, and as they burn down, another log will drop into it. And they're good for like 16 to 18 hours. You don't even have to worry about it. It's self-feeding. So that's a good one. If you have to camp out, what skills do you need for camping? You need to learn how to cook outdoors. You need um, food storage. If you have no power, how do you keep your food from spoiling? So
Well,
greenhouses are good in the summertime for things that don't need refrigeration. Um, Cold cellars. Cold cellars is another good one. You can just dig a hole if you dig it right and line it properly. Hay is a really good thing to line it with, and you can keep food cool. You can actually keep it from spoiling by putting it in the ground. And I don't mean burying it. I mean just digging a ditch and lining it with hay, and then putting the food in the ditch. Potatoes, onions, all kinds of vegetables. They'll last for months if
Yep,
you do it that way.
the old
So
root cellar.
that's where I would start. I would start by looking at your property, figuring out what the risks are. If the power goes out, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the food to keep it from spoiling and not have to throw it away? I mean, obviously, you can't keep things like milk and dairy. Those things aren't going to last. But if it's winter and you live where it snows, all you have to do is put it in a box and put it in the snow. Get a cooler and bury it in the snow, and it'll stay for a long time.
We actually did
Especially
that
if you
this
have
winter.
Yeah, especially if you have freezing overnight, right?
Yep.
So that's the thing, is like once you really start looking into the things that you need to learn, it's not that difficult. It's not. And there's lots of things you can do that don't cost a whole lot of money. Like one of my favorite shows on TV is this Homestead Rescue. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I love this show. They go in and they look at a property, they look at the weather, and they teach people all these different methods of gardening and some things that I never heard of. There's this German one. It's who I can't even say the word, but you build rows and you use hay and you plant in the hay, and Hugel something or other. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's an easy way to garden if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of water. The
Hmm.
hay holds the water. You build the ditches, you put a little water in, and the sand soaks up the water so the plants have an opportunity to grow. Hugel culture. I think that's what it is. Hugel culture. I never heard of it before. And they build all kinds of greenhouses depending on what's needed. And you learn skills from them, like how to decide what side of your house to put the greenhouse on. Where's the sun? How do you tell where you're going to get the most money the most sun for your buck, that kind of thing. So I love that show. That's on, it's on different channels in different parts of the country, but, and these people live in Alaska. They're true homesteaders. And they've done things like build water wheels. If you have a creek, it doesn't even need to be that deep. You can build a water wheel, which are not that expensive. Put this thing together and you'll have water. You can water your garden. You'll have water in your house. You can make a shower. You get a camp shower and have water coming through there. You can actually find a way to heat the water and have a hot shower. I love that show. I learned so much from them.
I'll have to
And
check
that's how I learn a lot of my skills. I just watch YouTube or I watch on TV these DIY programs, and it's a good way to build your skills.
Yeah, so turn off the local sitcom and go watch something that you might actually learn. And you can learn
Yeah,
anything on YouTube, anything.
yeah,
Trust me, you can
exactly.
learn anything on YouTube.
That's exactly right. You can. I mean, I try to watch several people and learn from people that really know. Some people are just out there doing their thing and they don't really know what they're talking about. So you kind of have to be careful and compare. Watch a few people and compare. And I have picked out my favorites, people that make sense to me, that I trust are doing the right thing. And I learn from them. But the best way, coming back to your question, was like, what skills do we need? You have to figure that out. Everybody has different needs. Every community has different issues that they need to prepare for. So it's really hard to say that there's just, general skills that you have to have. But one thing we didn't talk about that I want to go back to really quick is creating a family plan. This is a really important, this is like step one in preparedness. Create a plan for your family. That would include a contact list. You want to have on there people, somebody out of town that people can call in an emergency to check on you. And you have, obviously you want to get that person's permission. You don't want strangers calling them up and going, "Hey, I'm checking on so and so." Like, who are you? But this is important. When we had the Northridge earthquake, was 4:30 in the morning. The first thing I did before I even got out of bed was call my mother, because I knew I only had a cell phone, but I knew that the phone lines were going to be down and I wouldn't be able to get through. And so I called her first thing and I said, "Okay, I haven't even checked the house. I don't know what the damage is. I heard glass breaking. I've got to go check, but I wanted you to know I'm okay." And she lived in another state at the time, so she was my out of town contact. And so she knew when people called to check on me, "How's Julia? Is she okay through this earthquake?" My mother could say, "I talked to her and she's fine." And it was a day and a half before I could get through again. So knowing that makes it really important to have a plan, have somebody to call, and call them immediately before the phone lines are overloaded. Because it's not that the phones went down, there were just so many people trying to get through, in and out, that it was impossible. And the other thing is, if you have to get a hold of somebody by cell phone, use text, send a text, because there will be moments during the day where the text will go through. It won't go through right away, but it'll eventually get through sooner than your phone call would. So send a text if you have to, but that would be step one in creating a plan. And then make sure that everybody in your family knows who to call, what the plan is. You want to check with the schools. If you have kids in school, you want to check with the schools and find out what their plan is. If they have to evacuate, where are they going to take your kids? And I have learned that schools who should be sharing this with parents when they register their kids don't do it. And some of them don't have a plan. So this way you'll be forcing them to make a plan. What do? We're going to be worried about our kids. Our kids are going to be worried about us. How do we get in touch with the kids? If you have to evacuate, where do we pick them up? Same thing with hospitals. If you have somebody in the hospital who either works there or who's a patient, you need to know what their plan is. If they have to evacuate, where are they taking the patients? Where can you go to find your loved ones? So these are all like really important things to consider. Have an evacuation plan. What are the exit strategies to get out of your house if you have a home fire? or if you have an earthquake or a tornado and part of your house is gone or all of your house is gone. You know, how do you get out of the rubble? What do you need to do? How do you shut off the gas? Here's another skill. How do you shut off the gas lines and the water mains and things like that that feed into your house? Not everybody knows that, and they all require a different tool. So you have to make sure you have the proper tool at home in order to do that, especially the gas lines. That happened in Northridge. We had the natural gas lines feeding into these homes. People were so shaken up by this earthquake, they didn't give it a second thought to turn off the gas line, and 5 houses exploded. And I could hear them just pop, 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 one after the other. 5 homes gone. The whole part of that mountain was in flames from the natural gas lines because they didn't think to turn off the gas lines.
It's something you kind of gotta you gotta practice, because I even now I taught lifeguards CPR. I taught a lifeguard class, and then one day while I was actually there at the pool with the whole cadre of little lifeguards, and a kid actually did fall in the pool, and they all kind of stood there. They're like, what do we do? They knew what to do theoretically in a nice practice situation, but when they actually had to do it, it took them
Yeah,
all a couple of minutes to actually go and just do it. Whereas I've been doing it so long now, it's like second nature. I mean, I gave my own father CPR without even blinking when he passed. I was just like, okay, CPR, go. And it's
exactly. You
got
have
to
to
get to that
practice.
point. It has to
You
get to that
have to
point.
practice these skills. And I have a perfect story to tell about that. Um, when I was working in a 6-bed foster home, we had 6 boys in this home. No adult lived there. They had staff that would come in and out on a 24-hour basis, but no adult actually lives in a foster group home. So that was kind of creepy. There was just total lack of security that these boys had. And they were like, well, what if we have an earthquake? What do we do? So I walked them through that. I actually brought somebody in because they lived in a mountain community and there was a creek behind the house, and I knew there was food to forage. It was like, how are we going to get food? So I brought in somebody and we went had a foraging class. And we went out and picked out food from the creek and along the mountainside. And there was so much food that they were really surprised at how much food was available to them right outside their back door. And they started incorporating those things into their everyday diet to get used to eating them, like stinging nettle and watercress and things like that. Um, and those things are very high nutrient density foods, low calories, but nutrient density, and they keep you a lot healthier than just eating calories. So they learn those lessons, and then I had them make a plan, and the plan was you keep your shoes next to your bed because if there's an earthquake, things break and you don't want to step on glass, especially if it's 4 o'clock in the morning and it's dark. So they started keeping the shoes by the bed. Each one of them built a little go bag that they could take if they had to leave. It had water and some snacks. And, it wasn't a giant go bag, but we did what we could do. And everybody had a radio, an emergency radio, flashlight with batteries. We built all of that into their kits. And then I taught them all, they all got an assignment for me, like you turn off the gas. You're going to check for gas leaks, and then you're going to go turn off the gas if you have to. And then how to make that decision. I brought somebody from the gas company in to actually show them how to do it, to make sure they had the right tool, where it was stored, and how to use it, and how to tell if there was a gas leak so that they would know whether they had to turn it off or not, because you didn't want to, we lived in a house with just gas. You didn't want to turn it off if there was no leak, because then you have to wait for the power company, I mean the gas company, to come back and turn it on again, right? So many of probably the people in your area have a lot of propane. We do on this mountain. We have a lot of people here are totally dependent on propane. So you've got to keep your tanks filled all the time, because if not, the propane company may not be able to get to you in an emergency. So that's something else you have to think about, keeping your propane tank and any other fuel that you have. And I'm opposed to like gasoline, like gas generators. I don't want one. That seems to me too dangerous and counterproductive to have to store gasoline. Propane tank is another story, but gasoline, because propane tanks, a lot of people think that propane tanks explode, but they do not explode. What you see after an emergency coming out of a propane tank, if you see anything at all, is the valve has broken. And so you have the gas shooting up out of the valve, and it looks like it's on fire, and people think it's going to explode. Propane does not explode. It just shoots up, and yeah.
I did not
So
know that.
that was something that we learned from the propane company. We had a class on how to deal with that. So all these things. So then we had like, after we did this little preparation class with the boys, 2 weeks later, there was an earthquake, and it was a rather sizable earthquake. And they all got up and did what they needed to do. They followed the plan to the letter. And every one of them said to me, I didn't panic. It was so great to not be in a panic situation and just know what to do. So that's my story about why it's really important to practice these things, to get skills, to know what you're going to do. If you have kids, give them all an assignment so that they know what's expected of them and they won't panic. That's probably the most important thing you can do.
And I have one last question because my husband and I are having a difference of opinion. I've been considering getting my ham radio license, and he tells me it's not necessary.
Okay, I totally disagree with him. I've had a ham license for 10 years and I wouldn't give it up for anything. And now I have the GMRS license, which is different than ham because GMRS is local. That's just for your community, your local community. And here in our neighborhood, we have neighborhood watches. So the head of the neighborhood watch is getting a radio. We have an emergency preparedness committee here, and they bought some radios, and they're going out to the heads of all the neighborhood watches that we have. So we have like communities within the community here. So I totally think it's absolutely important. And with the ham radio, you can go far. I mean, I've talked to the space station. I talked to the
Oh,
astronauts
cool.
in the
Okay.
space station
Sweet.
on my ham radio. Okay.
That right
So,
there
and
is a
that is so cool to do that. Every June there's something called Field Day, and we set up and we get the public come in and they get to talk on the radio. We've talked to people in Australia and Hawaii and all. It's important. It's important. You can get the word out to somebody and ask them to call your family for you. If you can't get through to your emergency contact, you can get on your ham radio, reach somebody in another part of the country or the world, and ask them to relay a message for you. And whenever there's an emergency, the hams are immediately on their radio waiting for somebody to call in with an emergency to help.
well, just the fact that I might get to talk to the space station one day is good enough for me. I
Exactly.
want my license.
Yeah, I think you'll be happy you have it. I have 3 radios sitting on my desk that I monitor all the time. I've got my ham radio, my GMRS radio, and my CERT radio. And yes, I can use any one of those radios to contact all 3. And but I prefer to have them separately because if we're in an emergency, they're all going to be active. And I need to be available to all of them. So I have the 3 radios.
I didn't ever think of having 3 different radios for each thing, but there's some things, and I considered myself fairly well prepared, but you taught me a few things, so that's awesome.
Great. I'm
Just
so
some
glad. But you don't need to have 3 radios. That's my thing. I'm like, I'm on the radio planning committee, so that's my thing. I just
well,
think it's really important.
I have a feeling that if anybody's going to get anything instigated out here, it's going to be me because I
Yeah.
don't think my
Another thing, I know I don't know how we're doing for time, but
I have no
um
idea.
cooling centers, cooling centers and heating centers, having a place to go if you're having 100 and yeah, I lived in the desert before I moved up here. We had 117 degrees for like 7, 8 days in a row. And we had a community cooling center. They had a generator and air conditioning. But if you don't have a generator and air conditioning, what do you do? How do you stay cool? So that's another thing. We got these fans, and they sat in a big bucket with water, and you turn the fan on and it blew the water, made a huge difference. Or there's those like little hoses that you attach to your roof line, and it drops water down. It misters, that's what they're called, misters. That's another good way to cool off the environment. So, there's just lots of little things that you can do and need to consider.
Well, I think I'm going to start by getting the 7 or 8 little houses on my road together.
Yeah.
That's a good start right there.
And I will send you, I have something called the neighborhood circle plan, and it's how to get the neighbors together, how to organize it, the things you need to know. It gives you a checklist where everybody can check off what their skills are. That's be a good thing. I'll send that to you. And then if you want to post it, you can post it for your tribe.
Sweet. And I am going to share the link to your radio station on Facebook so people can check you out.
Great. That would be great. I would love it. And the show is fairly new. I'm just going on episode 5. But I used to do this just on Facebook, like live streaming on Facebook every week. I used to do these. So, and now I own the radio station. So that's why I'm doing a radio
so I can do whatever I want now.
Exactly. Well, within reason, it is still FCC licensed. So, it's a nonprofit community radio. So, yeah, but I can do certain things and can't do other things. But the Disaster Preparedness Show is being really well received, I have to say. I get comments everywhere I go. People are messaging me with topics they want to hear about, and I love it.
I think some people are actually beginning to realize that it's time. I mean, my poor sister survived the minus 25-degree Texas winter she was in Texas, and she's like,
Texas just keeps giving us all these things to prepare for, doesn't it?
yeah, now they got wildfires. It's like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I understand. I didn't have a chance to read the article today, but I understand that I don't know whether it was the power company or some energy company said mea culpa to that. So somebody's taking responsibility for it. And I don't remember what agency it was, but yeah, that was, yeah, we have that here a lot too. The transformers blow, they start fires. We've had a lot of PG&E and SCE responsible for a lot of fires here.
yeah, just crazy little things. Like I said, when you were talking about food, yeah, this winter we were at the point where we were putting our food outside in the snow to keep it cold.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It makes a perfect refrigerator. I learned that when I lived in Germany. Was not something I ever thought of before. But they have window boxes. In the summertime, they put flowers in the window boxes, and in the wintertime, they have coolers that sit in there with the food in it.
Yep. So
it's cool.
Yeah, that's why I think there's probably a few people out here that are beginning to start to think about it. Because I was messaging my neighbor, and she's like, I asked her if she had power yet, and she's like, nope, I'm taking my milk outside to put it in the snow. I said, oh yeah, good idea. I'm doing the same.
That's great. And one thing, going back to getting your ham license. So one thing I want to say, you can do that online. And there's a place where you take the practice tests online. You just take them over and over and over, and it lets you know what are the right answers and what are the wrong answers. And when you start scoring 90%, you're ready to take the test.
Sweet.
Never have to leave home except to take the test. You have to find out where they administered the test and go there. And there's a radio club that governs all of that. So you let me know when you're ready. I'll help you get that information together.
Fabulous. Yes, because I think I want, like I said, you just gave me another reason. I want to talk to the space station.
I know, it's so cool. And you have a short window of time because it's got to be when they're over you. And then you can get to them when they're over you. But you probably need a more experienced ham operator to do that with. But there's pretty much ham. There's a ham everywhere.
Well, I remember my dad back in the days of the CB radios. My dad had a CB radio in the house. He couldn't drive, so he didn't have one in his car, but he had one in the house. And I mean, he talked to
Cool.
people all over the place.
See,
And I remember that growing
yes.
up. It was just like,
CBs, they have a whole different language than hams. So it's like, good buddy. Hey, good
yeah.
buddy, you out there? You got your ears on? They don't say that on ham radio.
But but I remember him talking to people from all over the place, depending on, I guess, weather conditions or whatever. I mean, he could talk to people
Yeah.
that were like miles and miles and miles away some days. And it was just like,
Yeah.
wow.
And it's enormous for truck drivers. It's such a good tool for them to have.
So,
It saves lives. Radio saves lives.
well, thank you very much. Like I said, I learned things, and I consider myself pretty well prepared, and you taught me a few things. So I'm sure that people that are listening to this and thinking about it for the first time, or maybe just thinking about it seriously for the first time, you've given them a lot to think about. So I am going to post your link to your radio station on Facebook.
Yeah, that would
And
that would be great. And I'm happy to connect with anybody. If they had just have questions, I'm happy to connect with them, to talk to them. And I'm happy to do a phone call. I love it. I love talking about this stuff. It's so important. It's all life-saving.
well, I've really enjoyed having you on here, and I appreciate you stopping in and giving us your information. And you are such a wealth of knowledge. I may hook up with you myself to learn a few more things that I didn't know.
Awesome. I would love to.
All right. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you too, Melodian. I had a great time. Bye, tribe.
And if you liked this, you know the drill. Subscribe, share, comment, do all that stuff. I know I don't always remember to remind you. So when I do, it's important that you do it, because like Julia, I'm just growing. This is like my 8th episode. So we're 9th, somewhere around there. So help me grow, people. Help me grow. Do the thing.